All right, folks, welcome back. Before we get to Noah Rothman of Mediaite, I want to just bring you up to date on something. I was reading a story on Politico called The Rich Strike Back by Ben White and Maggie Haberman. And they were talking about how just a few months ago it looked like 2014 would be the year of the populists, with Democrats running on economic inequality, Tea Party Republicans, and bashing banks, etc. But first of all, I don't know what they're talking about. A few months ago, it looked like it would be the year of the populists, Democrats running on economic inequality. Well, okay, let's put all that premise aside and let's go on their premise. But the bottom line is they're talking about how the terrain is shifting and the 1% is fighting back, the 1% that have been villainized by this president and the Democrats, evil, and Bill de Blasio in New York, etc. And I want to read you a quote. I want to read you a quote because you're hearing this more and more. And you heard it to an extent from Ben Carson on this show yesterday. But let me read you a quote from Ken Langone, the billionaire co-founder of Home Depot, a major Republican donor. He said, "I hope it's not working," meaning, making the 1% into evil and the whole populist politics. He said, "I hope it's not working because if you go back to 1933 with different words, this is what Hitler was saying in Germany. You don't survive as a society if you encourage and thrive on envy or jealousy." And ladies and gentlemen, all Barack Obama is about is envy and jealousy and divisiveness and alienation and separation. He's the great divider. Remember when he ran? Oh, there's no blue, there's no red, we're all purple. Baloney. He's never governed that way. He's never believed that in his heart. He's never believed that in his mind. Not for 1 second. He's all about divide, divide, divide. Why should your neighbor have it if you don't? That's what Barack Obama is all about. Despise your neighbor because you don't have what your neighbor has. And it's not fair that you don't have what your neighbor has. That's not what America's all about. That's not what America's ever been about. If you want what your neighbor has, then work harder, strive harder, do better. But no, that's not what Barack Obama preaches. He wants everybody to have the same. And if everybody doesn't have the same, it's not fair. That's not America. That's not capitalism. That's not the American dream. That's a whole nother political system. And this is not the first 1%er to say what he has said, and he is right. He is absolutely right. It is reminiscent of what Hitler did in order to divide, in order to put a scapegoat out there. And in Barack Obama's world, the scapegoat are the millionaires and billionaires, except the entertainers, the Hollywood elite, and athletes. They're okay. They're okay. They can make $25 million a movie, or they can make, $15 million a year playing sports. That's good. But if you're on Wall Street and you make 200 grand, you're evil. How dare you have a good car if your neighbor doesn't? It's a very dangerous scenario he's setting up. Very dangerous. All right. Noah Rothman, editor at Mediaite.com, is going to join us. I want you to hear how Russian television, RT to you and me, is covering this whole Putin-Ukraine thing. And give her a listen.
Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. The population of Crimea votes to decide its legal right of self-determination. How did it come to this? Is it because of the Western-backed coup that has brought fascists to power, or NATO's relentless drive east? Is all of this a sideshow to undermine Russia's legitimate security interests?
No, that is not a comedy show, ladies and gentlemen. That is Russian television. And, Bill Clinton is a neocon. The Ukraine opposition is like the Taliban. And it goes on and on and on. And Noah Rothman wrote a great piece documenting all this and provided the video. Hello, Noah.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Good to talk to you. That anchor quit RT a couple of weeks ago, although that was a little controversial. She did work for them for a long time. But this is nothing but almost a comedic propagandist arm of Putin.
Yeah, and it speaks for itself. Like you said earlier on, there's virtually no truth to that. I would add that the NATO's relentless drive east relented after 2004. We had the opportunity to admit Georgia and Ukraine in 2008 and opted against that. And shortly afterwards, Georgia was invaded. And obviously, we're dealing with another invasion in Ukraine. And I think it speaks volumes, and it's rather interesting because the network there, it's an American network, it's populated by Americans. That was a guy with an American accent, a broadcast from the United States. From the view of Moscow, they don't make distinctions in the United States between left and right. All are enemy, and that's something that I believe Americans should take to heart. We're dealing with something that is very much akin to what we fought in the 20th century. It is a familiar enemy, and it should really make everybody consider keeping politics at the end of the water's edge, because this is something that most people in this generation haven't really experienced in quite some time. This is something very, very much a 20th century phenomenon. We're going to have to reacquaint ourselves with old-fashioned nation-state politics.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. They also hired George Galloway, the former British MP, who was a radical leftist supporter of Saddam Hussein, I believe at the time. The whole thing, he's working for them?
I don't know if he's working for them. He certainly appeared on that broadcast. He appears at
yeah.
just about any American venue he can find.
Okay, well, pretty wild. All right, let me ask you, if I can, about let's shift gears and go to the coverage of the missing airliner. CNN has virtually decided to go 24/7, said 24/7 coverage of it. There's not a lot of new news. A lot of it is recycled. It's the theories every day. Some of them are from yesterday, and some of them are new, but they're from 2 days earlier, which are regurgitated, and the guests are the same. But it's working for them, apparently, in the ratings, so they're going to keep going with it. It's kind of like a Natalie Holloway thing. Do you believe they're overdoing it? And by contrast, do you believe a network like Fox, let's say, is underdoing it?
No, they're absolutely overdoing it. And it's pretty clear. They have been doing very well in the ratings, but it's at the expense of the credibility of a news network. And they acknowledged this in sort of tangential ways when the New York Times had a profile on this extreme, ridiculous amount of coverage, which focuses on, as you said, every new development, most of which turn out to be false reports that have to be taken back hours later, or just 24 hours later at most. They're doing wildly well in the ratings, but then the Times went out and asked for some executives to speak with them, and no executive would go on the record to defend their coverage. They all defended the coverage, but it was all anonymous quotes. And the Huffington Post picked up on this. Michael Calderon, and he requested some comment from CNN, and they never got back to him. But they're doing wildly better than their competitors in this situation. They're reaping some real ratings rewards, which is something this network has lacked significantly for some time. So they're trying to make up some revenue, which they really badly need. But at what cost? And frankly, I think it's rather significant at this stage. This has become an outrageous, unwarranted amount of coverage for this story where there's very little news to report.
Right.
We've gotten into the point where we're speculating, quite literally, about supernatural forces being responsible for taking this plane and steering it off somewhere to another dimension or another planet. This is literally where we've gotten to, and this isn't news. This is something quite different.
Now, as far as Fox, you said, I think when your first part of your answer was no, they're not underplaying it. I'll give you a chance to answer that because that's what I took from your answer. And if also address, I mean, are they doing enough? Are they because Shep Smith's whole new kind of show was and his whole new role there at Fox. I thought that would have been kind of a perfect role, a perfect fit for a story like this, where he could do a lot more with it, breaking into shows, coming into shows, etc. But how do you feel their coverage has been?
Well, frankly, I think Fox has been doing too much of it, too. Everybody's been doing too much of it. There's nothing to report. So if anybody is doing more than a passing glance at the story on an hourly basis at most, it's too much coverage. And Fox is right behind it with a significant amount of coverage. Who hasn't done a whole lot of reporting on this of the three major networks has been MSNBC, and that's not really a compliment is largely because MSNBC can't be moved from the script. The script is Republicans are terrible and the death penalty is awful, and by the way, homelessness, and they can't be maneuvered from that position. But everybody has been guilty of feeding too much into this frenzy because it's rewarded in the ratings. And it's just, frankly, a lack of self-control. This is not the business you're supposed to be in.
Right. All right, Noah, let me let you listen to Kevin Sorbo, the actor who we had on yesterday, responding to Bill Maher, who, of course, Sorbo's new movie, which comes out in a few days, is God's Not Dead. And, of course, just on Friday, Bill Maher, I mean, one of the most obnoxious things he's done, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, calling God, you know, all kinds of names, and a murderer, and mocking anybody who believes in the Bible. Let's give a listen here and watch it. Here's 35.
You know, I did Politically Incorrect a couple times, and all I can do is feel sad for the guy because I think he's a very angry, lonely man, and he takes comedy comes from anger anyway, and you know, what are you going to say when a guy talks like this? And I wonder what happened in his lifetime that has such a hate, because the atheists I've met, not all of them are angry. I've got some very good friends who are atheists, and they just don't believe. They simply don't believe. We've had great debates about it and things like that. There's no reason to even to try to talk to a guy like that because he has so much hate. I said a joke one time on his show, Politically Incorrect. I had a big laugh. During the commercial break, he leaned over. He says, "You're good looking." Oh, yeah.
Wow, that insecure?
Oh, yeah. There's no question about it.
All right, well, what wasn't on the tape there was he leaned over to him and said, "You're good looking, let me be the funny one." So, you know, that's kind of bizarre, but interesting. He also agrees with me. He doesn't have HBO because of Bill Maher either. So I thought I was the only one in the country, but apparently there's one other. But what was your take on Maher's, you know, rant against God?
Well, I can't really sympathize with Kevin Sorbo for not having HBO. As much as you find Bill Maher distasteful, just about everything that HBO puts out is spectacular, and I really couldn't live without it. So I definitely don't watch his program as much as I can get away with it if I'm not working on a Friday night.
Right.
But yeah, Bill Maher's a bomb thrower. He always has been, and he makes his way, you know, saying really crude things. There's really very little defense for what his political stance is and his choice of rhetoric which he would attack other people on the other side of the aisle for employing if he had the opportunity. But he does have one thing which I can say in his defense, and it's not really a defense of him, but it's defense of his editorial judgment. He's the executive producer of a program on HBO called Vice News, which does something that's virtually extinct. It does actual investigative journalism. Sends reporters to hot spots around the world, you know, favelas in Rio, and tribal lands in Afghanistan. And it does journalism that reporting outlets no longer do. So good for Maher for investing his money in something that's actually beneficial. But his comedy show is nothing that I have any use for, and neither does Kevin, evidently.
Somebody should call the baseball commissioner in the New York Mets and ask how this man could be a minority owner of the Mets. I wonder if he was a conservative bomb thrower. Hey, like a Rush, well, I don't compare him to Rush, but any conservative who wants to buy into sports, like Rush wanted to buy into the football team, is not allowed. Anyway, Noah, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Have a good one.
My pleasure. You too. All right, folks, when we come back, Joel Rosenberg will be here. He's got a great new thriller out based on historical fact, of course. We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about Israel on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax TV.